very excited, very excited. I was waiting 16 years for this day.
I don't know. I hope now change and good change, but not only in Hungary, around the world. It's not normal now.
He had all the opportunities to make Hungary great again. This is a very common phrase now, but he missed this chance, definitely.
Hi again, everybody. It's now 5 o'clock in New York. At times over the past few years, in those darkest moments, it's felt all but inevitable, that methodic, creeping descent into an authoritarian future, not just here in the United States, but around the world. Today, though, just as Donald Trump's vice grip over our American system starts to slip away, people halfway around the world are likewise rejecting those autocratic impulses and tendencies and embracing, or rather re-embracing, a bold new vision. This weekend, against all odds, voters in Hungary ended the 16-year reign of far-right Prime Minister Viktor Orban. Among the reasons it was such a stunning result, and tell us if this sounds at all familiar to you, Orban manipulated the country's election system and initiated a takeover of its media outlets. And yet, this was the scene last night. Among the shouts from the crowd, quote, "Russians go home." Indeed, Vladimir Putin was an advocate for Orban. So, too, was Donald Trump, who even went so far as to dispatch his vice president, J.D. Vance, to campaign in Hungary last week for Orban. Our friend Ann Applebaum put it like this, quote, "Orban's loss brings to an end the assumption of inevitability that has pervaded the MAGA movement, as well as the belief, also present in Russian President Vladimir Putin's rhetoric, that illiberal parties are somehow destined not just to win, but to hold power forever because they have the support of, quote unquote, real people. As it turns out, history doesn't work like that. Real people grow tired of their rulers. Old ideas become stale. Younger people question orthodoxy. Illiberalism leads to corruption. And if Orban can lose, then his Russian and American admirers can lose too." To be clear, Orban's replacement is no liberal. He's a center-right politician, and while he will likely scale back some of his predecessors' more autocratic policies, some things, like Hungary's approach to immigration, will likely stay more or less the same. But the point is this, made so eloquently by historian Tim Snyder, quote, "Just as Hungary once offered the international oligarchical far right the confidence that a formula had been found, it now offers to men such as Vance and Trump the anxiety that voting might actually make a difference, that democracy might actually turn out to be more than a slogan, that unpredictable change is still possible, that the future is open." That is where we begin the hour with some of our most favorite experts and friends. Joining us from Budapest, staff writer for The Atlantic, Isaac Stanley Becker is here. Also joining us, senior political analyst, our dear friend Alex Wagner. She reported on the dismantling of democracy in Hungary under Orban for her podcast, Trumpland. She's now a contributing host on Pod Save America and the host of the podcast Runaway Country. Also joining us, our dear friend, political analyst, former Senator Claire McCaskill. Isaac, because you're there, I'm going to start with you. Tell me what you're hearing and seeing and reporting.
It's been an extraordinary 24 hours. I think the scenes on the streets really say it all in terms of the jubilation, the euphoria we're seeing. Spoke to people last night and early this morning who felt as if they had taken their last chance to really step back from the abyss, that if Orban had been reelected, that would have been it for democracy in Hungary, that he would have continued this kind of consolidation of power, the entrenchment of these patronage networks, crony capitalism, and they would have lost their chance. But they took this chance, and as you said, despite the odds, really showed that voting is still powerful, even in a very unfair system.
Isaac, what impact, if any, did J.D. Vance's visit have?
This was a subject of so much fascination and chatter here. In recent days, I spoke to some Western diplomats in Budapest who speculated that it may have backfired for a number of reasons. I mean, the Trump administration's war in Iran is deeply unpopular in Europe. And I think there was also a suggestion made to me that welcoming any foreign leader could have backfired because the whole basis of Orban's campaign was Hungarian sovereignty and nationalism. So So why is he campaigning with the vice president of a foreign country? We don't have polling that fleshes this out, but we certainly know that it did not pull Orban over the finish line, which is what Trump and Vance wanted. But I think that we also, it's been, a really hectic couple of days with the results last night and the whole system change. But just to step back and just, remember how unusual that moment was to see J.D. Vance here. I mean, American vice presidents and presidents just have not done this. They have not traveled to foreign countries at the expense of U.S. taxpayers and campaigned so overtly for, politicians in foreign countries, and especially not politicians who also enjoy the support of the Kremlin. It was frankly a surreal scene.
I mean, Alex, it's like the axis of Putin-backed autocrats, and to make that such a public brand and then to have it backfire, it's like the jokes write themselves. How politically toxic is J.D. Vance? He's so toxic, he dislodged a Putin-aligned 16-year autocrat from Hungary.
Yes. I mean, I don't think J.D. Vance helped matters. I don't think the war helped matters. But, Nicole, I was there last year, and this is a testament to the tireless and brave work of journalists who basically left consolidated oligarchical state propaganda outlets and formed independent news media outlets and continued the brave work of reporting on the corruption, the breathtaking corruption in Orban's Hungary. It is the work of activists who are out on the streets every week protesting at their own peril amid swarms of riot police, every week saying, we will not stand for this. This is not democracy. We want freedom. Young people who refuse to give up, people who are advocates for a more transparent governance, who are monitoring corruption in terms of the purse strings that Orban controlled and consolidated when he came back to power. I mean, this is the work of grassroots networks that have been operating honestly without a lot of money, a lot of attention, and I think not a ton of hope as far as the international community was concerned, but they kept at it. And without their work, without those foundational efforts, this victory wouldn't have been possible. Magyar, I think, seized on really important issues like the quality of healthcare in Hungary, the economy, and Orban's abysmal shepherding of it, and education, which is also an issue in Hungary. But really, the people that primed the pump, if you will, the people that did the hard work of helping him claim victory were all these ordinary, everyday Hungarian citizens who just refused to give up. And it is, I think, their win more than almost anybody else's.
I mean, it's impossible, right, as an American, desperately rowing toward the pro-democratic forces in our country to prevail, to resist the temptation to ask what worked. So I won't. I mean, Alex, just say a little more about what you started to say about how the media bravely covered the corruption outside of the state takeover of media.
Yeah, well, I mean, Orban, through his cronies, basically consolidated or shut down all the national news outlets in the country and turned them into state mouthpieces. And journalists resigned en masse, and they decided to form their own independent outlets. Like Telex is one that is super important in terms of independent investigative journalism, Direct 36. These are organizations that were, public, funded by the donations from interested readers. And these journalists did real investigative work that actually, I do think, turned the dial up, turned the heat up on Orban in a meaningful way. You had people that worked for organizations like K-Monitor that monitored the just insane levels of corruption at every level of the Hungarian government, and did so for years. For years, they documented this stuff. And they also showed the Hungarian public what it was like to have functioning local level governance, so that they could contrast what it looked like to have a functioning government with one that was completely beholden to corrupt actors. And, then there's just the people that stayed interested and stayed awake, that were just normal Hungarian citizens who refused to give in to Orban's iron will. And I think, we can blame J.D. Vance and Trump and the war and all that, But this really is a collective effort that should give all of us in the United States who want to turn off the news and just forget about what's happening and focus on our own discrete lives, which is an understandable instinct of self-preservation. This should give us pause, because actually staying alert to the degradation of our democracy, and that's what Hungarians did. And look at the outcome over there.
Claire McCaskill, 65% of Americans disapprove of Donald Trump. And on the sort of psychology of power, on the ferocity of political and prosecutorial retribution, Trump still has a stranglehold over every elected Republican in the country, with the exception of Thomas Massie and I guess ex-office holders, people like Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney. I can't count 5. What is your sense of how the Democratic Party can take the best lessons from what is happening over a much longer experiment, if you will, an autocratic rule, and apply them ahead of the midterms and the next presidential?
Well, first, I think the most encouraging thing about this is the propaganda didn't work. Imagine the amount of heft that was behind the state media in Hungary. And I cannot even explain how they trashed the guy that won. I mean, he was everything from a pedophile to a thief to all of it. They said things that without any factual basis, and none of it worked. So that's encouraging. And the Democrats should take encouragement from that. And everyone should support independent journalists also in this country. But Democrats need to understand Orban lost because he was deeply, deeply unpopular. And I think the guy who beat him understood that all of his policies weren't unpopular. He was just deeply unpopular. And we have the same situation in America now. So I think it's really important that the Democrats let that simmer, Trump's unpopularity, because he's now kind of in a free fall. He's doing really stupid stuff. I mean, the fact that he took down his picture of him as Jesus as quickly as he did, that is not the Trump we know. He clearly is off his game. So let that stew. And Democrats need to stay focused like a laser on how to disrupt the status quo in a way that reassures Americans they're looking out for them. For the families that can't make it all come out even at the end of the month. For the families that are going into debt on credit cards just to buy their medicine. There are literally 40% of America is living paycheck to paycheck right now. That's what the Democrats need to stay focused on and not get distracted. Yes, it's so tempting just to hammer Trump all day long, but they really need to stay focused on a laser that they are an alternative to somebody who's deeply unpopular that will, in fact, deliver some results for Americans who are so frustrated right now with everybody that's in government.